This is the kill count, where I count every kill and every death in the games I play. Today, I'm playing Alan Wake's Special Episodes. Developed by Remedy Entertainment, the first 2 DLC episodes came out in 2010, with the standalone game American Nightmare being released in 2012. Picking up directly after the events of the main game, we follow Alan Wake while he explores the dark place and attempts to find a way out. These episodes get real weird with it, emphasizing the strangeness that our hero has to contend with in order to get back into the real world. How many more kills does he ride off during his escape from Cauldron Lake?
Yeah, you're right. Everything that happened before made perfect sense, but this is insane.
We begin the signal with Alan experiencing deja vu as he finds himself back in Bright Falls, but this version received the Breaking Bad Mexico filter. Alan goes to the back and knocks with fervor this time, but no Carl Stuckey can be found here. Instead, Thomas Zane sends a message via bathroom TV claiming Alan is causing all of this and to calm the hell down so he can help him out. He sends down valuable resources and tells Alan he needs to find another point of contact so they can communicate directly. Back in the diner, Alan's first confrontation with the Taken takes place, and it's apparent right away that the DLC will pose more of a challenge than the main game. 4 enemies swarm Alan inside the small diner while he's forced to dodge and shoot until they're down. He may be in a different dimension, but wood gets fucked up just as it did in the real world. At the end of the main game, we saw floating words that can be burned away using light. That becomes a more prominent mechanic here as Alan finds a lot of his resources this way, including a direct link to Zane.
Can you hear me now?
Verizon was a major brand used in the original game, with the phones using their logo. Alongside them was Energizer branded batteries, and of course Microsoft branded products seen throughout as well. Due to the long development cycle, Remedy worked out these details to keep things afloat. Thankfully, this was all nixed in the remastered version to not include any obnoxious advertising in-game. Zane warns Alan he's treading deeper into the dark place, and that he needs to find him so he can help end this nightmare. Even though the signal is a little spotty, Alan's GPS works well enough to provide the next waypoint. Sure, he can get a signal in another reality, but AT&T can't seem to give me a solid signal in half of my goddamn city. I leave the house, and while I'm highlighting deaths at the end of these videos now, I can't help but show off the idiotic nature of this one. The TVs in the DLC serve as warnings for what's coming next, with this set in particular telling me the cars will attack me, and boy do they. As soon as I step foot on the streets, a cutscene starts and Alan gets folded into a vehicle before I have any chance to react. After fighting off the fast family as poltergeists, I add another 20 kills to the count utilizing all the resources I obtained earlier. Zane calls Alan to warn him he continues to go deeper into the dark place and needs to knock that shit off. He uncovers a memory from the main game when he and Sheriff Breaker whoop some ass on their trek through Bright Falls. Figuring maybe following the memories is a good idea, he walks into the church and down into the basement where he tells 13 more Taken about his favorite Hozier song. Since apparently all of this is in Alan's head, he can bring his best friend into the fold all willy-nilly for moral support while he heads towards the sawmill. The kill total is pushed to nearly 50 on the way using mostly firearms. However, the addition of environmental boom words allows Alan to blow up a couple of the Taken. Afterwards, I run into a flock of the Raven, which I'll treat like the poltergeist and won't count. However, the game wants me to keep counting, putting Alan into a light post battleground with a lot of enemies waiting for him. But there's far too many to fight, so the smart decision is to run and fight when necessary. With the help of the flickering lights, I add another 9 Taken to my kill total before entering my next battle, where a couple trucks jumped me. Well, one jumped me, while the other flipped on its back like a helpless little turtle. After damaging both of those trucks beyond repair, Alan has some thimble-dicked truck enthusiasts coming his way, forcing him to kill even more. Along the way, Alan uncovers snippets of Alice talking to him, and each one is hornier than the last. He's trapped in the dark place, and his mind is on one thing: murdering that pussy. Eventually, we find ourselves inside his apartment again, where Zane tells Alan he's trapped inside his own nightmare and needs to fight against himself to escape, but the propaganda on the TV tells him otherwise. This starts the only boss fight of this episode, where Alan kills 9 more Taken, alongside weakening the TV until it eventually can't fight back anymore. However, he forgot to turn the volume down, so TV Alan screams so loud that he faints and wakes up to Dr. Emil Hartman once again at the retreat. The camera pans out to show Al still inside the cabin on Cauldron Lake, surrounded by paper, muttering over and over again that there's no way out. The signal ends there, and we begin the second episode titled The Writer. Remedy always intended for Alan Wake to be a larger franchise and didn't want to stop at one game. They cranked out these 2 DLCs in American Nightmare pretty quickly. Quantum Break released 6 years after after Alan Wake and began as a sequel, but Microsoft wanted Remedy to create a new IP instead. Later on, they formed the Remedy Connected Universe and Control in order to bring back their beloved character. Feeling a little discombobulated, Alan begins seeing Hartman and Barry until it fast forwards to a familiar scene showing the two friends conversing with a locked gate between them. He remembers that everything that's happening is due to him and reminds himself to stop fighting himself. That's confusing. Barry points out that Zane's super bright ass light is inside the lodge, but some good old fashioned killing needs to happen before he can enter. Zane informs Alan he needs to get to the cabin on the lake and shake himself awake, but he's hit a heavy dose of them edibles and it's gonna take a lot of work.
Wake was too hot. Too high!
And perhaps for that reason, the landscape continues to get stranger and stranger, while the kill count continues to get higher and higher. After running through the hamster wheel of Alan's life, I enter an elevator to have a brief chat with Zane. He asks if Zane has ever found a way out of the dark place, to which he confesses he hasn't discovered one. Transmissions can be sent between worlds, which means there may be a way through. The elevator takes us to Carl Stuckey's gas station, which begins a gauntlet of kills between the Taken and some Ravens. During his kill-tacular, Alan is reminded by Zane that a version of him that's stuck in the cabin is going absolutely bonkers, whereas this version we play as represents the rational portion of him still left. The fact that two of him exists blows Alan's mind, but even stranger is his doppelganger is not a version of him. Zane says Mr. Scratch only looks like him, and that's where the similarities end. After the murder spree is finished, Al pops in like a fly on the wall to spy on one of Hartman's therapy sessions with a TV-headed Alan. Between this scene and the TVs littered throughout his journey, it's obvious the dark place is trying its damnedest to convince Alan to stay put. Hartman uses Alice's voice to demean Alan and make him feel unwanted. Luckily, our Alan recognizes it for what it is and continues blasting Taken as a punishment for trying to besmirch Alice's name. Finally, we arrive at the lighthouse, which leads us directly to the cabin. As a last-ditch effort, Barry shows up to try and convince Alan to turn around, otherwise he might catch some hands. But he's a certified badass now, and steps into the clearing outside of the cabin that forces him to fight friendly-looking foes and 63 Ravens in the process. First, it throws Hartman at us, which is an easy kill for Alan, but afterwards, it sends the epic old rock stars our way. And like the ghost of Sparta, neither Thor nor Odin stood a chance against Alan. Finally, the final foe is our old pal Barry, but this version is infinitely more annoying and takes more damage than the others. But in the end, he falls and the darkness dissipates from inside the cabin. Alan heads up the stairs to find himself tweaking hard on the ground. As soon as he reaches down to comfort his insane self, they become one. A now much more clear-headed Alan Wake looks out the window feeling rejuvenated and ready to escape. He isn't sure how he'll do it, but he begins the only way he knows how, and loads the typewriter with paper to start his next novel titled Return. And that's where the writer ends. American Nightmare is distinct from the others. It has an entirely different atmosphere to it. While everything before it was more David Lynch and Stephen King, this game pulls from the likes of Tarantino and From Dusk Till Dawn. The camera zooms in on a sleeping Barry's motel room, giving us a brief glimpse at a badge that shows he's now representing the old gods of Asgard. He fell asleep watching Night Springs, but he's missing the best episode. This one in particular was written by and stars Barry's missing best friend. Actor Lloyd Floyd voices the narrator and does a pretty great Rod Serling imitation while explaining that Alan is facing off against his evil lookalike Mr. Scratch. He easily knocks Alan down, who wakes up right outside the town of Night Springs, Arizona. Shortly after taking control of Mr. Wake, I had 2 kills using the default handgun given to us at the start. There's a motel in the distance and we're going to want to get there pronto as Mr. Scratch sends a wave of his extra deformed minions. American Nightmare features loads more weapons we can use to take on the Taken. It began with a single game mode called Fight Till Dawn, where the player must battle against enemies until the sun rises. But as Remedy continued to develop it, they saw an opportunity to include some story content. It wound up being a lore-packed experience with manuscript pages providing even more details on the world. The combat is also way more refined and it emphasizes that by throwing tons of ammo and supplies our way. At the motel, Alan meets Emma Sloan, who immediately recognizes him. He requests she hand over a typewritten page she has on her. She does that reluctantly, but only because she has no idea how he knew she even had it. He advises she stay in the light and ventures back out to find a way to close off the portal under the oil derrick. The page he got from Emma points us towards 3 different items that need to be used in sequence in order to plug the derrick's hole. But each item has its own bodyguards that need to be demolished. The final item is a car battery that Alan takes back to Emma for a recharge. She gets it done extra fast so Al can recharge charged with an extra 8 kills in order to secure black gold up on the hill. Alan inserts an old relic that plays Clubfoot by Kasabian that gets him all amped up to use the valve and the battery to finish the job. But this is an episode of Night Springs written by Alan Wake, so once that's finished, some wild shit happens. It triggers a collision that may explain why my AT&T coverage blows. The satellite crashes into the oil derrick and lands near the motel, but like my parents, fire and oil do not mix well, causing a small disaster that forces us to make a run for it. On his way back to the motel, Alan is in a giving mood, and these guys sure like taking bullets to the face. Al approaches Emma again and asks about Mr. Scratch, and even though it seems like she's withholding something, she suggests he go check the diner up the street. After a short poltergeist battle, I enter the empty establishment where we spot signs of a struggle in the back along with some keys. The camera pans to the motel much faster than Alan can run, showing the darkness knocking out the lights followed by Emma's screams. We never see her body, but the narrator confirms that she dies here. 7 more taken meet their end on the other side of my SMG before Alan gets back to the motel and lets himself into a room containing the body of a man named Michael Farabee. Mr. Scratch killed him and left all kinds of evidence to point Alan towards the observatory. We observe 11 more kills as Alan climbs the hill towards the top where Dr. Rachel Meadows berates Alan for having the gall to ring her buzzer. She believes him to be Mr. Scratch, but after seeing the Taken attack him, she realizes that's not the case. Inside, she informs Alan that there's a peculiar signal she's trying to check out, but her equipment has been sabotaged by his assholey lookalike. She asks if he can retrieve the junk in her trunk to repair the telescope, and this is where we're introduced to the spiders. They're much easier to deal with than the ravens and quickly rack up another 10 kills. Before she can actually tele the scope, she needs the coolant system engaged, which of course is guarded by even more Taken, bumping that kill total up by another 21. Without the shadowy interference, Rachel is able to read the signal, but it's incomplete and difficult to decipher. There's enough information for Alan to determine it's showtime at the drive-in theater, where Serena Valdivia greets him, making strong suggestions of some after-hours activities.
You know I'll do what you want.
Alan is more of a lights-on kind of guy, but Serena isn't.
Where shouldn't I go so I don't turn the power back on accidentally?
After finding out where to restore the power, Alan heads outside where his equally as good-looking doppelganger shows up sporting a terribly ugly attitude. And what Scratch giveth, Alan taketh away, pushing that kill total over 500 while turning the power back on. Back near the entrance of the theater, Alan talks to a now clear-headed Serena that expresses her disgust and her behavior that was forced on her by Mr. Scratch. She admits she's surprised to see him because everyone thinks he's dead, despite there being rumors of Alan being spotted in the real world. Eventually, she points Al towards the projection booth saying Scratch is hiding out there. Upon approaching it, the booth goes dark and sprouts a unique security system that adds an extra 8 kills. Using the access code given by Serena, Alan enters the booth and immediately spots a blast from Remedy's past with an arcade machine of their very first game Death Rally. Using the clues from the signal from the observatory, Alan changes the month and time, but all that does is trigger a live-action confrontation with Mr. Scratch, who claims his life is now his and blasts him right back to the beginning. Alan stands up, ready to have another go, hoping the blackness will not hit him as the void keeps calling. He does not want to do the time warp again. A new version of the Taken that can change into a flock of ravens enters the chat and quickly exits it. Alan runs right back to the motel where Emma is back alive and kicking, but clearly remembers dying. She tells Al she gathered 2 of the 3 items for him, but one of Scratch's bros ran into a cave with a battery. This is where things get a little fucky because we're stuck in a time loop, which means people come back and get killed again. I'll be counting duplicate kills as they come along because even though we go back in time, people's minds are not resetting. They're revived and remember everything they experienced. This also makes subsequent runs faster as Alan and the other characters know it's coming, which means the rest of this is going to fly right by. After spelunking for the battery, Alan lashes out the action and returns the reaction towards 20 spiders and several more of the Taken in order to shut off the oil derrick again. Emma hands over the motel key, saving us another trip to the subpar diner. Al warns her again to stay in the garage, but as soon as he leaves, she dies yet again. Michael Farabee is found in the same room and Alan waves farewell-a-bee before heading up to the observatory again for some additional murder. Rachel feels the same sense of deja vu when Alan buzzes the door. We begin the whole rigmarole of repairing the telescope and ensuring it stays cool, adding 17 additional Taken to the kill count in the process. Rachel hands over another fragment of the signal, prompting our second visit to the theater to milk the hell out of that A-list membership. Serena comes onto Al again, but doing this a second time wears on the patience a little bit.
I'm already married to someone who isn't crazy, thanks.
You know she's corrupted, Alan. Have some fucking chill, man. God damn. Yet again, we head to the back to turn the power on, and yet again, Mr. Scratch sends a fresh batch of his Taken my way who meet their matches of their dispatch to the kill count. Inside the projection booth, Alan does the calendar and the time again, but adds to the sequence with a poster and some light. That's still not quite enough, and prompts another visit from our shitty twin, Mr. Scratch. Games love to do things in threes, and this is no different. We start at the beginning one more time with a new type of Taken dubbed the King Hillbilly from our protagonist. These Hill's eyes are weak though, and it goes down without much effort. We quickly run to the motel again where Emma thanks Alan for saving her before her scheduled murder, and asks that he find a way to keep her alive this time before handing over the motel keys. He battles 5 Taken out back and lights up a breaker so the darkness cannot access it and turn the garage lights off. Emma might be saved, but Michael Farabee suffers the same fate and dies a 3rd time. Rachel talks to Alan as soon as he leaves the car over the nearby intercom, saying she prepared for his visit, so all he has to do is get the coolant online again. This gives us 20 more kills to add, but the real fun begins inside the observatory when 18 Taken invade the space while one of the old Gods of Asgard songs plays. This section is hype as fuck, and probably my favorite moment in the game. We take a now completed signal back to the theater, but this time we start in a different spot closer towards the back. This is just a reason to get even more kills at a faster rate as we turn the power back on and give a huge middle finger to Mr. Scratch while he continues to throw Taken after Taken at Alan. Throughout the game, there are 9 short clips that are around 2 minutes long each, with Mr. Scratch showing how unhinged he really is. In 2 of these, he kills someone on screen, with one of them being Michael Farabee. Another one is a blonde woman who we only see from behind. After a while, he slits her throat with glee and continues his madness, with a later video detailing his intent for Alice Wake. Finally, back in the projection booth for the final time, Alan completes the menial tasks necessary to end Scratch's existence in this recurring nightmare. He evaporates after being exposed to the light, but we know he doesn't die here as he's later mentioned in the AWE DLC in Control. The game ends with Alan and Alice reuniting as the Night Springs narrator poses the question if what we just played is real or simply a dream. That episode of Night Spring ends there, and so does this kill count, but not before the final numbers. I finished the 3 special episodes with a total of 742 kills, and only 6 of those were not done by me. This time, the Taken far outnumbered anything else with 72.23% of the total kills, and the shotgun being the most used weapon against them, totaling right under 27%. Ravens were still the 2nd most killed enemy, followed up by spiders. Finally, the bosses and innocent bystanders bring up the rear. I died a total of 10 times in the first 2 episodes and 0 times in American Nightmare. It just really shows how much more difficult the Signal and the Rider are in comparison. Since I earned 736 of those kills directly and died 10 times, that gives me a kill-death ratio of 73.6. It took me 6 hours and 23 minutes to beat everything, which gives us a kill on average every 31 seconds and a death every 38.3 minutes. The special episodes are must-plays if you're a fan of Alan Wake. It gives us further insight into the Dark Place and how it functions. American Nightmare specifically provides a lot of lore for it, and Mr. Scratch, who I expect to see a lot of in the sequel. If you enjoy my videos, please consider giving this a thumbs up and subscribing if you haven't already. I'll be hard at work on Spider-Man 2 and Alan Wake 2 by the time this comes out. As always, thank you so much for watching. This is King Deschain, signing off for now.